Hi, it's Andy back here from Rehab Room. Here we are with episode number 3 of my mini-series, The First Steps to Career Work in Professional Sport. In episode 1, we looked at breaking barriers, so looking at and identifying and breaking down those barriers that are in front of you as aspiring sports professionals wanting to work in professional sport. In episode 2, we looked at doing your research and how we can actually use research into the individual and also the organisation or team that person's involved with to really nail down your initial approach. So when you're first contacting a club, a person, whether that's looking at an opportunity of shadowing experience, a placement if you're still studying, or even work, what strategies you can do and not to fall into the same mistakes that a lot of professionals make at the moment. So there's aspiring sports professionals are sort of falling the first hurdle really. In today's episode, we're going to talk about CV writing in particular and how you can stand out from the rest and put together a real knockout CV. If you missed the 2 previous episodes, if you visit rehabroom.co.uk, you can navigate on the homepage there to the 2 episodes that are there. And obviously this episode will follow on from those, so give you a bit of a real insight into helping you take those first steps to career work. Something that you're really interested in, or maybe struggled in the past. Maybe you've sent numerous CVs and applications off to sports clubs, and you're just obviously not getting the response you want. You're not getting that interview. There might be some sorts of tips and tricks that I'll speak through today that'll be of use to you. Also, I put together a free book recently called The 6 Simple Steps to Writing a Knockout Sports CV. That's available up at rehabroom.co.uk. You'll find some real good in-depth advice there. I've had some fantastic feedback for the people who have read it, so by all means check that out. And this will obviously go alongside sort of today's episode number 3, and obviously give you some help really and some guidance to obviously make that path for you into professional sports. The process of putting together a CV, a basic CV, is not that difficult. There's plenty of templates out there online and various websites and stuff that can help you sort of put together a decent enough CV. But if we're looking at getting into professional sport, we know it's a very competitive environment, and you're going to be competing against a lot of people, sometimes hundreds and hundreds of people apply for a single post. So we need to be able to stand out from the rest. And unfortunately, in my experience that I've had with people applying for jobs here at the club and speaking to other sports professionals in a variety of different sports, 99.9% of people don't stand out, and that is why a lot of people sometimes will fall that hurdle and not get asked that interview. So today's episode is all about giving you 3 main tips really, just not to fall into the same mistakes that other people make, and do your best to stand out from the crowd and give your best chance of getting that interview slot, so then you can go meet those people in person and obviously try and get your foot in the door. Tip number 1 relates to experience. So in an ideal scenario, you're applying for a job and you've had exposure at a professional sports setting if possible. I spoke before in previous sort of material that I've released, sometimes it's not always, it's not imperative that you have professional sports experience, but having experience in a sporting setting is obviously is very desirable. So whether that's amateur, semi-pro or professional is not the be all and end all. What is important, I think, in terms of experience is, rather than just listing a line of clubs you worked at, whatever the level, what we really want to know is what you've actually learnt while you've been there. So quality is definitely better than quantity. So in terms of some professionals and some aspiring professionals, I think fall into the trap of trying to get badges, if you like. So trying to get experience at clubs, which is good, but they just want to get as many clubs as possible. So when they go to apply for a job and hand in their CV, they can list 10 clubs they've had exposure at. Whereas I think it's more important that you show the depth of what you've actually learnt during that period. So you might have been to 10 clubs, and if you've learned a fantastic array of assessment, treatment, training, whatever obviously sports profession you are, that's fantastic. But a lot of times doing a day here, a day there, a day everywhere is probably not going to give you that depth and that continuity of care that you're going to get in a professional sports setting. So sometimes you can make that quite clear in your CV and show, give examples of what you've actually learned during your time at a particular club. So I think going into more detail and depth about your actual experiences rather than just listing the experiences themselves is going to give you a better chance of obviously getting that interview and put your it gives us a bit of a knowledge base about what you've actually picked up and what you've actually learned during those experiences, not just a list of places where you've been. You could list where you've been on holiday, but it's not really telling us much about what you actually did and what you actually enjoyed about that particular experience. And the same goes for getting experience in terms of looking for jobs. So I think, to summarise, going into quality and depth of what you've actually learned during that time at that particular club, whether it's amateur, semi-pro, professional, is not really the issue, rather than just listing clubs and hoping that, because you've listed a few professional sports clubs, that's going to, stand out from the page, because it's not. We want to know, where you've been, yes, but we want to know obviously what you've learned during those times.
Number 2 relates to substance, and it's really closely linked to tip number 1 about experience and showing that quality and depth of your previous experience. But substance doesn't necessarily just relate to those previous experiences. That will obviously relate to working in a professional sports environment. It relates to your previous experiences, whether that's previous work away from sport, whether that's some life experiences. So really what we want to know is, what have you experienced prior, and how has that shaped you or changed you, or how has that shown you a different direction or path, whether that's additional study, whether that's some experience you've then gone on to experience. So I think showing sort of substance gives a lot of depth into your character and what you're about. Again, linking back to the first example, we don't just want a list of things you've done and experience. We want to know, how they've influenced you, the things that you've learned and things that you sort of changed, and what you've done, if there's things you've noticed, for example, in previous experience, work or otherwise, or academic, that you've maybe, not being quite up to key with really, and then you've obviously gone out of your way, been proactive enough to be able to then learn something new, or go out of your way to pick stuff up and to get better at those things. So I think having substance to what you're doing is vitally important. Again, we don't just want a list of experiences. We want to know how those experiences, work-wise, academic or otherwise, have moulded you and made you the person that you are, and basically getting to showcase.
Right at the end of tip number 2, I mentioned one word, which was showcase, and that links us in with tip number 3, which is all about showcasing you. So going, obviously, TCV, when we're reading it, we want you to stand out from the page. If I was to say 95% of the CVs that I've ever read applying for jobs in professional sport look exactly the same. There's nothing really different about those, and the ones that are different are generally the ones that we look at interviewing, because they're showcasing what they're about, and they look a little bit different to the rest of the pile. So ultimately, we have an interest in that, and we want to find a bit more about them, and hence a lot of the time we will invite those sort of applicants for an interview. So tip number 3 relates to being able to showcase what you're about, and I think linking in, particularly number 2 in terms of substance will help you do that. But what we really want to know, if I was going to summarise, is we want to know a little bit about you. So we want you to try and get your personality across in that CV. I know it's very difficult with a CV. It's quite easy if you were face to face, but ultimately that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to get you to get your personality across in that CV. So then we invite you for interview. Obviously, we then meet in person. Then you can really get your personality across. Because I've spoke about previously in material that I've released, and personality is a massive thing, particularly working in sport. You need to have, good personal skills to be able to work with, not only different staff, but obviously the players that you work with, and that's a massive part of what we do as, as sports professionals. So being able to get that personality across is vitally important, during that CV, because ultimately, if you're unable to do that, that might be the difference between, you getting an interview slot or not. I write about this in depth during the ebook I spoke about at the start, so the 6 simple steps to write a knockout sports CV. So please check that out at rehabroom.co.uk. And like I said, there's tips around obviously how to put together that CV, which for a lot of you that I spoke to previously, and the feedback that I've got via email and social media is the CV writing is something that a lot of you struggle with. You feel like you've put together a really good sort of package and CV, but you're just not getting the those interviews and responses that you want. So by all means, check out the ebook. Hopefully you found today's episode really useful. Any feedback you've got, I'll be vitally be looking forward to hearing it. So obviously contact me on either on social media or Andy at rehabroom.co.uk. please visit rehabroom.co.uk. So like I say, I've got the ebook up there and various other content like this which you might hopefully find useful. Also, I'll be launching, or relaunch should I say, the Foot in the Door programme, which is a real comprehensive 6-week intensive programme all about getting you your foot in the door at professional sports club. So if this is the sort of thing, you know, CV writing's a big part of that programme. If you're struggling to get into professional sport and you want to get the inside track on how to do that, the Foot in the Door programme will be for you. There's details about what's included in depth up at rehabroom.co.uk. Just navigate to the Foot in the Door tab. It'll be relaunching a week on Monday, which is Monday the 17th of July. There'll be some more information about that coming out next week on social media and also through my mailing list, which you can find at rehabroom.co.uk. So if that's something that you may be interested with, by all means get in contact, see rehabroom.co.uk. There's more information up there. Any questions, like I say, don't hesitate to get in contact and I'll speak to you all.